How do you lower your carbon footprint? That's probably one of the questions that a lot of people have, but don't really look at. There's a lot of calculators out there. Some work well, some don't. But we always try and figure out like where our measurement is from an estimation point of view, and then how can we actually lower our carbon footprint, right? Because once you know where you're at, you can find ways to actually lower it through food purchases or clothing purchases or travel or lack of travel and so forth. And maybe the things you drive or your heating bill or the way you heat your home or cool your home. There's a lot of different ways, but sometimes it helps to have a bit of that guide. So today what we're going to be going over is finding ways to lower your carbon footprint. Forbes put out a great article on how to reduce your carbon footprint, and we're going to talk about some of the things that have been added to there. That's on this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And the first action you're taking is by tuning into this episode and this podcast, and whether you're on the YouTube channel or you're on our website, speakupforblue.com, or you get information to your inbox from our site if you go to speakupforblue.com/newsletter and sign up through your email for free. And I protect your email, I don't sell it, and you get ocean news, all our latest podcasts, all our latest videos. You get access to 3 news articles every day, Monday to Friday, and of course 3 different types of job advertisements if you want to dedicate more time to the ocean. But on today's episode, we're going to be talking something differently. I haven't done this in a little bit. We're going to be talking about lowering your carbon footprint. And this is something that I always find interesting because over the last number of years, previously, like 10, 20 years ago, there was a big focus on lowering your carbon footprint. Each individual should lower the carbon footprint. Then it kind of got out being like, why do we put the onus just on individual people? The governments should be helping us lower the footprint by putting the regulations in terms of, fossil fuel caps and usage, oil and gas development, which all is encompassed coal and things like that, and going more toward renewable energy. That would have a bigger impact from a national and international level. So international deals were created, some were destroyed, and some were created again. And we've started to see that evolution. We started to see more and more countries work towards that, but it really depends on which party of that country is in power for that government. For instance, the Trump administration that just won their election last week is going to be coming in January, and they are going to be taking apart a lot of the climate change policies. So they've said that has been put up by the previous administration, the Biden administration. And we're going to see a lot more development of oil and gas and fossil fuels than we saw previously to this administration that the U.S. has now. And the same thing in Canada, the Liberal government's in power right now. They're trying to do as much as they can, maybe not as much as they can, but they are thinking they're doing as much as they can to lower climate change greenhouse gas emissions. But the new government that could be coming in, if they're led by conservatives, which it looks like it's skewing towards that way, then with an election coming up next year in 2025, that could be more of taking away policies like the carbon tax, taking away other policies for climate change and reducing climate change, and putting in more policies to develop the tar sands, which is very dirty gas that is made from Canada. And we're going to see a lot more on, just degrading the environment. That's just, for some reason, that's the Conservative Party at this point, in my opinion, and from historical records. Regardless, people have to deal with the governments that have been elected in a democracy, right? Whether we agree with the government's policies or not, they're put in place because people wanted them. The majority of people wanted them in place. And so now is time to really start focusing on your individual footprint and how you can reduce that over time. Don't necessarily rely on some governments to be able to help you with that, whether it's through incentive programs like money back programs or anything like that, or rebates. But the time now is to really focus on what you can talk about and what you can do on an individual basis. Obviously it's not going to help in the overall schemes, but it can help you feel better about yourself to say, hey, you know what? I'm actually thinking more sustainably. I'm thinking more about the planet, and that's making me feel better from a mental health perspective because I know it helps me. So the first thing to do is to figure out what your carbon footprint is today. Don't judge yourself too much. try to figure it out. There's a great tool for the Nature Conservancy. I'll link to it in the article. I'll link to the article that has it in there. I've tried to use it. Just full disclosure, I'm having trouble getting past the first part. I don't know if it's just because I'm coming in from Canada and maybe it didn't like it. It looked like it liked my address, but it didn't really work through. So I'd love to hear if you have any trouble with it or you have success with it. Please let me know. Hit me up on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean, or on YouTube, or comment below on the YouTube video for this episode, or comment in Spotify. But I'd love to hear what your results are, and were you surprised by it? But go through that process. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-step process. Even tells you how to take action and gives you their total footprint. Asks you, like the first page asks you like how many people in your household, what's your approximate annual gross income, household income, and so forth. So it's kind of really interesting. You might need to look up some information on your bills and things like that. But I think it goes to home and travel and food and shopping and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a cool thing. So that's the first thing. Like, get what you have and understand where you are in your carbon footprint. The other thing to look at, according to this Forbes article that talked to sustainability leaders, they talked about buying vegetables instead of beef. So when it comes to making more eco-friendly choices, shopping choices, experts generally advise buying local or artisanal products rather than mass-produced food and fast fashion. So the first thing, let's talk about the food. Local farm food is usually pretty good. You want to try and stay away from any imported food if you can. Try and stay away from any mass-produced like beef or things like that. Try and go to local farmers to get the beef if you can. I know groceries are expensive, so I'm not expecting everybody to go bankrupt overdoing it. Sometimes I can't buy, the perfect type of meat or vegetable because it's just too expensive, trying to find where it is, or it becomes almost impossible to get on a regular basis. So do what you can in making doing that research. Talk to local farmers, talk to maybe some farmers markets, and find out where you can get. It's the best is to start up for your local farmers market and see where that goes. But livestock are the major source of a major source of methane emissions and a powerful greenhouse gas, many times more potent than carbon dioxide. So shifts from meat to more plant-based proteins in your diet could reduce food footprint by 50 to 80%. That are far greater effective in simply choosing locally sourced beef. So if you can go more towards that, vegetable-based diet, it's also better for you in a lot of ways. You can still have some protein, some meat, some seafood, and so forth. Just be careful where you get it from. And I think that's really important. But locally raised beef are more sustainable choices than factory farmed, of course. Same with chicken. With your fish, obviously wild is probably better. But even some aquacultured sources can be good. But do your research in trying to find that. Then the other one was talking about fast fashion versus, sort of wear wool. So wear wool instead of fast fashion with synthetic fibers. So stay away from clothes with synthetic fibers, which is very difficult because most clothes are synthetic fibers and most fashion is fast fashion. I am a father of 2 girls. The shopping is happening in this household, and a lot of the times it's frustrating because the items they buy, you can tell are from fast fashion. They're very, very cheap, which makes it really nice as a family of 4 in today's economy to be able to buy clothes for my kids to be able to wear, something that they like. But it's also, is it the best for the environment? Can we lower our footprint just with where these clothes are coming from? Is it better to buy less, that it's more expensive, but it'll last longer? Staying away from synthetic fibers is great. Staying away from fast fashion brands, which is awesome. There's a recent article that was shown. Zara's, a fast fashion company, has been using upsell of reused denim, but it's actually new denim, and so they're trying to use that the upcycle, and it's greenwashed, but not in a good, like, it's just greenwashing, which your company does not want to be associated with. Nobody wants to be associated with that. So you have to be careful when you start to see these words like upcycled or recycled. Are they actually recycled? Are they actually upcycled? The best thing to do that is cheaper, I always tell my kids too, if they want to buy their clothes, go to a thrift shop and buy thrift clothes, because at least it's better to reuse those clothes than it is to buy new ones in fast fashion. You can get them for just as cheap, maybe cheaper than the fast fashion brands. So that's always good. And the third way is to invest in sustainable business practices. So in this one, it's actually really interesting. So the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Compass offers a practical guide for entrepreneurs and executives who want to promote more environmentally friendly processes at work. So they can allow them to be to distribute to committees, environmental committees at work, and those committees can actually put together the guides and say, hey, how can we adapt this to our business practices, and how can we become more sustainable at our workplace? It empowers your staff. If you own a business, it empowers your staff to be more conscious, to make them feel and do better and use more sustainable practices in their life. I mean, I know a lot of times people are working from home. Some people are working at work. So having these committees for both situations, if you're a hybrid workplace or you work completely remote or you work at work, to have these guides to be able to shell out to employees. If you're part of an HR or human resource department, would be great to have for your employees. Employees can lead the charge on disruptive change by advocating policies to reduce environmental impact and improve corporate transparency. A Scripps Health, an employee-led sustainability council brought forth improvements in operations across a variety of areas, including construction, energy, food, grounds, recycling, supply chain, transportation, and vendor partnerships. So another step could be swapping older incandescent light bulbs with Energy Star's sufficient or certified bulbs that can reduce power consumption and lighting fixture of a lighting fixture by 90%, according to the EPA. So there are some ways that could really help the business save money, and empower their employees to put these guides together for their workplace. So a quick and easy guide, 3 quick, easy steps. Stay away from, highly farmed or factory farm type of food. Get more local. Connect with your local farmers at your farmers markets. Usually every place has them, and you'll be able to, in North America anyway that I know, and you'll be able to connect more with, people who are creating your food. You get to know the people who are creating food instead of just buying it at a grocery store. So there are always farmers markets around. There's always places. Sometimes there's companies that create these ways of getting vegetables from different farmers locally, or meat sources from different farmers if you're looking to still eat meat. And then, of course, stay away from fast fashion brands. Go more wool. Try and stay away from highly processed and synthetic fibers. And then, of course, the last one is putting these energy and sustainability practices into your workplace so that you can empower your employees as well as do some really great savings with your company. So that's always good for companies. You save on the bottom line. So and you're more sustainable after that. So it's always great. Stay away from greenwashing, of course, and do your best to lower your carbon footprint. And of course, always start off with a calculator that at least gives you an estimate of what you're doing. Start off. I'll put the link in the show notes. And you can check that out. But thank you again for listening. I'd love to hear, if you go through this calculator, what your level's at, how much do you think you can lower it by, or if you've lowered it in the past and followed a similar process. I'd love to hear from you. Just put a comment on the YouTube channel or Spotify, or send me a DM on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean. I'd love to hear from you. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. But thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.